Momoko 120%. Now there's a Japanese title. The premise for this one, a 4-year-old little girl, armed only with a ray gun, must escape from a burning building. Yes, her school is on fire, and apparently everyone's already evacuated except for her. Oh, and aliens are trying to kill her. They say the first 5 years of your life are the most formative, and at 4, she's already abandoned to die in a burning building while having to use deadly weaponry to fight off little purple blobs, monsters made entirely out of fire, and most importantly, monsters made entirely out of fire. Here's to living a horrible, fearful life, little girl. All the exits seem to be constantly out of reach as she infinitely travels from side to side, so the only way out is up. Like you'd expect, her nursery school is 5 floors tall with escalators. Man, I really need to go to Japan sometime. They probably have elevators and bus shelters and roller coasters with TVs in them. Look at how she jumps. Is it even physically possible to jump like that? I don't think she even bends her knees. Anyway, once our heroine reaches the roof, a blimp with her name on it is waiting to airlift her to safety. Hooray! After an ordeal like that, the law of averages says that you'll never have to deal with it again. Until you turn 6. You guessed it, all her life this girl is being relentlessly pursued by fire. Every school she goes to ends up catching on fire, and she's left to her own devices to escape. Luckily, when it comes to surviving the unsurvivable, Momoko always gives 120% and brings her ray gun with her to elementary school every day. You never know when you're gonna have to kill flying blue piranhas or big green antenna blobs that spawn children whenever you shoot them. Now why do buildings burn to the ground wherever she goes? You could guess that the aliens who are trying to kill her did it, or you could imagine that she's a pyro and she sets the fires herself. But I like to think that it's just her lot in life that she has to escape a towering death trap every couple of years. The fates are just aligned against her. And the fact that aliens just happen to try to invade her school at the exact same time is just further evidence that someone up there really hates this poor little girl. She's just one awesome cosmic disaster magnet packaged as a sweet, innocent little preteen child. Life is so good. Believe it or not, this game was actually originally going to be based on the anime series Urusei Yatsura, and for whatever reason they couldn't get the licensing, so they just changed the protagonist into an original character. I've reviewed games based on pre-existing franchises before, and my rule is that unless they seriously deviate from their original form, I can't really blame them for being weird. Sometimes they're just being faithful to their source material. I admit I don't know much about this series, but I'm just about positive that it's not about a little girl trying not to get burned to death at school, so I stand by my assertion that this game is freaking weird. And for some reason, even though they couldn't get the license and ended up changing the characters around, they still kept the music based on the show's theme song. Anyway, what kind of school has monkey bars to climb across gaps in the floor? Why are there trampolines? Why are there... Okay, ladders aren't weird, just the control scheme. You can't just hold up, you have to repeatedly tap it to climb up one rung at a time. When she turns 12 years old, that's when I start to notice how spastic her running animation is. Look, it's only 2 frames. Legs together, legs spread way apart. Think this looks natural? Why did they program it this way? I mean, it's not a technical limitation. Check out how smooth her ducking animation is. So why is the animation you'll be seeing for 95% of the game so choppy? At least she learned to bend her knees when she jumps. At this point in the game, slime starts dripping from the ceiling. However, if you've ever been to a middle school cafeteria, you know this isn't that out there. By the time she's 15, her schools have gotten ridiculously huge, 12 floors high, and no matter how much you wander back and forth, you never come to a wall. How are these flames able to climb so quickly when they have an infinity of horizontal area to spread out? Then she turns 18 and is out of school and has a job in what looks like a television studio, and it catches on fire. Call me crazy, but if I ran a company that used a lot of extremely expensive equipment, I'd be reluctant to hire someone who's had 4 of her schools burned down under mysterious circumstances. You might as well hire Launchpad McQuack. So now that insurance nightmare is over, Momoko reaches the top floor of her office building, leaps back onto that same blimp, and heads off to safety. Now, who exactly is flying this blimp? Is there some superhero like Night Owl who just flies around the city looking for people to save from burning buildings? I can only imagine his reaction. You again? She's such a frequent rescuee that he has her name permanently written on the side of the blimp. Rescuing the same girl is a full-time job apparently, and that's how this superhero branded himself. The guy who rescues Momoko. Well, really, I'm kind of assuming Momoko is her name. For all I know, it's just the blimp's name. Hey, maybe it's a living sentient blimp that flies around solving mysteries, righting wrongs, and having adventures. Like the Littlest Hobo.
If you weren't raised on Canadian television, I apologize for confusing the ever-loving back bacon out of you.
If you remember these weird green blobs, they drop power-ups for you that upgrade your ray gun. First to shoot a powerful wave attack, then to go back to the original sucky pellets again, then 2 waves, then back to the original again, then 2 pellets, a cool laser beam, and then finally a wave again. Amazing progression, guys. While running around trying to navigate a maze like school or television broadcast center, you may occasionally cut corners with the amazing futuristic technology called doors. Like, what's with the crazy sci-fi teleport sound? Is this supposed to impress us? We've had this technology for centuries. It's not even technology. It's walking through something and coming out the other side. People invented this when they discovered they could walk into caves. Wait, how did she come out of the wall? Okay, now that's just weird. Oh, and sometimes little whoever will wander into a door and arrive in an obstacle course. That's also on fire. Now some of you are probably saying, oh, that's just because it's inside the same burning building. Okay, I'll buy your explanation. That means that, A, somebody went to the bother of setting up an elaborate series of hurdles in the middle of an infant school. B, the little girl wanders into this room and upon discovering it doesn't turn around and say, I don't have time for this, and actually plows through it despite having an extremely pressing matter to attend to, i.e. not being incinerated. In this obstacle course, she has to jump barrels. So that says to me that someone else didn't bother to evacuate and stayed behind to roll a bunch of barrels at her rather than get out of the place before it burns to the ground. Is this a prequel to Donkey Kong? No, hey, think about it. The one rolling the barrels at her is Donkey Kong. She tries to escape the building, but because they keep messing around with barrels, the whole place burns down. That's why when Mario finds the place, nothing is left but girders. And when he sees the girl and the big giant ape standing there in the wreckage still throwing barrels at her, he assumes the worst. It makes so much sense now. Look, what do you have to avoid in Donkey Kong besides barrels? These guys. Look familiar? Checkmate, Internet. Checkmate! In the final level, the little girl is now a grown adult, 20 years old. In this stage, she doesn't have her ray gun and only has to run around collecting treasures before the time runs out. And then when the timer hits 0, wedding music plays and she heads into a church and marries some guy. I don't know who the guy is. He's never been around any of those times she was in moral danger, so he just hasn't been an important part of the story. It's like she's marrying a total stranger. What was the meeting like when the idea for this game was pitched? It's a coming-of-age story about a little girl growing up in Japan who has to survive her 4 schools and later her workplace constantly burning down. Then she gets married. To who? Who cares? Some guy. And then they have a baby right there at the wedding? Then the game starts anew with our new protagonist, the latest in a long line of fire-escaping girls. Yeah, apparently nearly being burned to death is hereditary.
Okay, this is a bit of a sidetrack, but what's up with Japanese companies and how they title their stuff? Momoko 120%? Now, over the years, I've noticed a lot of bizarre trends in Japanese titles.
The first being that they seem to use words that they must have just ran through a Japanese English dictionary without realizing that the words don't translate perfectly. A word that has a positive connotation in Japan might have the same basic meaning in English but with a negative connotation, like hyper or panic. The word panic gets used in Japanese titles so much it's obscene, and it always means something delightfully frenzied, not like you're claustrophobic and got locked in a car trunk for 8 hours. We've got Doki Doki Panic, Strawberry Panic, Panic Bomber, Mahjong Panic Stadium, Nyan Nyan Panic, Head Panic. What? There's even a game just called Panic. Another weird thing they'll do is take a famous title from an English language movie or book or something and use the same name but change a word or two so that it doesn't make sense. Do you know what a Full Metal Jacket is? It's a type of bullet, a soft core encased in a full metal jacket. That makes sense. Now what in the Christmas is a Full Metal Alchemist? Or heck, let's combine those two rules and do Full Metal Panic. That's so amazingly nonsensical. I'm gonna slap someone and tell them to pass it on until eventually it reaches the person who came up with it. Then we have weird religious references that have nothing to do with the story. Huh? What? 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 So finally, we come to the insertion of nonsensical characters into titles. Street Fighter II Unnecessary Apostrophe Champion Edition. Ranma Half. Okay, now with this title, I originally thought those were X's. But no, they're multiplication symbols. And they're silent. And now we have this game. Momoko 120%. They had to have just made that up for no good reason. There's no way it could have significance or relevance to the source material. Is it an inside joke? I can buy that. Like, when they had to change this game from Urusei Yatsura to original characters, maybe they had to change 20% of the game, so all in all they did 120% of the work they were supposed to?
Or here's an alternate theory. They just fricking put it in there, knowing it meant nothing, figuring it would probably drive somebody nuts 20 years later. Well, if so, mission accomplished.
It's just Bo 7 times!